Really?
Yeah. So this is going to be the training for the progress notes, and what I can do is I'll email this out to you guys. That way you guys can have a copy of it if you need it. Otherwise, you don't need it. So we'll kind of breeze through the first part. The demographics obviously is the client's name, the date that you saw the client. This needs to match what you have in Therapist Helper. When I ran a report last week, believe it or not, there was some that did not match. So you want to make sure that those two are matching. The location also needs to be matched. This I normally saw with therapists who are outpatient and school-based therapists. So this sometimes might, confuse you. And if you guys have questions, just let me know. Start time, end time equals time. So please make sure that this doesn't go into like the 8-hour mark. You want to make sure it's 60 minutes and somewhere around that vicinity. This is a red flag that comes up in batching. It's supposed to be batching, not bathing. So in the batching, if you get like a red flag in there, it'll be an obvious check that you did something wrong with your time. Provider name is autofilled, insurance and service provided. Really the most accurate place that I normally get that information from is to check in the monthly report. And sometimes that happens, for example, I don't know if you guys have this, but I'll have a client who has about 4 different insurance providers, and I try one and it says no units available for this client. So then I go to the next one, and then it just gets irritating. So, and then I end up with 4 progress notes. So really after the first one, I usually just go in the monthly report and check to make sure it's what's accurate. Helper will kind of only give you the MD or the individual code. The participants, who was there, I like to put that the therapist was there. Some people only put the client and caregivers. This you want to make sure matches whatever is in your narrative. So if in your narrative you say that dad participated in psychoeducation, then hopefully in your participants area it says dad. So
are we not supposed to put their name, just client?
Yeah. It's okay if you do that from now on.
Yep.
Okay, so high risk. This is very important. Whenever you check off high risk, I know it's in a funny place right now, and sometimes people don't see it, or once they click it off, they don't go back to stop clicking it. If you have a client that's high risk, this sends a tickler to a report that QAQI runs to check in to see how this high risk client is doing. So sometimes therapists will say they're not high risk anymore. Why do you keep sending this email? Reason is that keeps auto-populating after you do that. So you just want to be mindful of it to check it off if they're no longer high risk. So what I got in the next point is just some examples of what you might want to document in the narrative. So for example, client's current status, a safety plan, reason for removing the high risk status, completion of the risk assessment, plan after completing the risk assessment. So what in the narrative are you going to show that says that the client is high risk, what you're doing about it, why you're removing the client from high risk? Okay. So next one, treatment plan goals and problem statement. This you want to make sure that whatever's on your treatment plan and or your treatment plan reviews new goals are matching on your progress notes. Know that whenever you create a supervision case review form, sometimes it takes whatever was written in that form and puts it onto that area of the progress note. So you want to be very cognizant to know that whatever's on there is matching what's on your treatment plan. Okay?
If it's not?
If it's not, then you can just change it. Do you guys have the ability to change it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Next one, affect mood, making sure that this matches what you're writing in the narrative. On some of the progress notes that I saw, they would put dysthymic, but then in the narrative, they would write that the client is having, a great time, showing smiles and laughing, and it just didn't match. So you want to make sure that that's matching whatever you're putting in your
Let's
narrative.
go with primary, right? Because sometimes they come into session crying and upset, and then they get happy before they leave.
Yes.
were that good.
So, the next one, you can scroll down for me, buddy. So, the next thing we got on there is the motivation. So what's the stage of change? And know that this represents the client's motivation for the current session. It's not, during the course of the treatment, how have they kind of been in regards to wanting to work on whatever issue that they have. So this can change. And so, for example, in the last group that I had, they said, this is kind of hard to do with a 6-year-old. These are bigger words for, more of a teenager. But really, whenever you're interacting with that client, how are they reacting to you? Are they engaged with you? Are they not engaged with you? If they're not engaging with you at all, and they don't want to work on whatever you think they need to work on, then they'd be in the pre-contemplative stage. If they kind of give you an off and on vibe of wanting to do whatever you got on the agenda, then they're in the contemplative. If not, the preparation stage where they're trying to start that out. The action, you got the intervention, they're in there, they're doing the work, they're using the interventions. Maintenance, a little bit better than that. They're on a regular basis being able to do that throughout the session. And then relapse, they had some trouble during the session.
Eric, if they're using some of what you're doing, is that still considered preparation or action? If they're using some but not all of.
Do they get,
Yeah, where would you put them?
or are they getting to the point where you want them to get to the point? So if they're doing the activity and it looks like they're getting some insight into it.
Okay.
So really I would say it kind of just needs to match what's going on in the session, okay? Next one, the interventions. This is the big part that's really going to be changing. We're going to be changing to describing what interventions are evidence-based and what interventions are scholarly-based interventions. And the way that it's going to be looking on the progress note, and I need you guys to use your imagination. So using your imagination, imagine that there's going to be one intervention right here and one intervention right here. So it's going to be a column, I guess 2 columns. So it's going to be one here and one here, first with evidence-based practices, and then after that it's going to be scholarly-based intervention. So there'll be one here and one here. And so then
You just pick which ones you're using in that section.
correct. So for example, what we're looking to do is to make sure that the interventions that you're picking, that you're actually using that intervention. Because a lot of people would be putting play therapy, but they would be doing something completely different that has nothing to do with play therapy. And we needed to build a better fidelity checklist in our progress notes. So those different bullets that you see underneath the interventions, those are going to be in the drop-down box. So what you're going to do is you're going to click, let's say for example, on play therapy. So which one of those interventions in play therapy did you utilize? Was it directed, undirected, relearning, desensitization? So then that's going to go in that drop-down box. And also please know that these aren't set in stone. This is only me going through, 2 or 3 articles on each one, kind of seeing what's the basics, ins and out of these interventions. So if you're an expert in play therapy or stand-trade therapy and you say, you know what, Eric, I think this is a common thing in this intervention, I really think it needs to be in that drop-down, let me know and we'll add it to it, okay? So, any questions about that? No? Okay.
What's the difference between scholarly and evidence-based?
Yeah.
Scholarly is like
Thank you.
someone's essay.
So what we had to do, because I really didn't know, but what Jeff said was to have the, or to draw the line is, there's a national registry of evidence-based interventions. I don't know I think I know what they have to do to be on that list. I think they have to have some type of validity, some, they just have to be.
Research.
Yeah. Whereas the other ones, they do have some articles based on them, but these ones have a little bit more on them.
Are you taking the ones off, or are they still gonna be there?
Actually, we did take quite a bit off.
Of ones that we had on our progress notes?
Yes. So the ones that we have on there,
And when's this change gonna take place?
January 1st, hopefully. So the ones that we have on there, so evidence-based, we have EBT, motivational interviewing, the brief strategic family therapy model, EMDR, scholarly-based, we have play therapy, oh, I went down too far.
All these are gonna be on the new progress now?
Play therapy, Santrate, art therapy, role play, skills building,
They're all on there.
anger management,
They're all
behavior
on there.
management, parenting skills. So we took some out that were kind of redundant, like RABT was kind of pretty much the same thing as cognitive behavioral.
And role play you probably took off.
We took off role play.
Because it could be.
Did we take
It
off
could be
somewhere
an
else?
yeah.
Well, that's psychodrama.
Not necessarily. It could be.
Oh, role play.
Oh, role play, social skills building. Yeah.
Oh, role play is that?
Verbal, kinetic.
So, okay. Got about 7 minutes. So, let's go to the narrative. Really yes.
What we were asking about in the treatment plan review meeting, I think it's been a long-standing question of when you do your treatment plan review, and then you put a new goal on there, so you do your review, then the new goals page. It doesn't seem a lot of times that the new goals then transfer over to your progress note and and now get put on there. Is that happening, or I'm hearing a lot that it's not?
No, it is happening.
I think it is
Is
happening.
it? Okay.
I think though that if you have multiple problem statements, it might only take the first one and it'll keep the other ones. But I can check on that, or if you can give me an example, then I can check on that for you.
Okay, like 30, okay.
It depends also when the treatment plan is authorized. If you're doing a review and it's not been authorized yet, even though you've written it, it's sitting up in the supervisor's box, it's not gonna show in the progress note until it's authorized.
Oh, yes. Yeah. But let me know, I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
So let me know and then. So in the narrative, really this is where you can kind of state what's going on and kind of make the progress note a standalone document, and really give evidence to what's going on with the client. I'm not going to tell you so much, this is exactly how you have to write your progress note, or you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. Really, I just kind of want to give you a broad sense of what we're looking for, because I don't want to take too much creativity away from you guys, because I think that's important to have your own style. But just know that this is, what I think is important. Subjective versus objective. Client looked angry versus client displayed anger mood as evidenced by yelling, arguing, reporting, I'm mad. So you saw, the mood that they had, but you backed it up with some type of evidence that they're displaying. This goes to anything else that they do as well. So let's say that you did, like I played Uno with them. So if I only put, I played Uno with client, and I beat client, 3 times, client got angry. How do I know that the client got angry? What was the point of me doing that intervention with the client? Therapist and client played Uno to explore reaction to losing. Client lost 3 times and was able to cope with losing by breathing in deeply and reporting to self it's only a game. So you're using, evidence to back up what you're putting down. And it's matching to the problem statement. So for example, let's hope that that client has an anger management problem statement. Okay. Interventions match what was marked in the interventions area of the progress note. really what I kind of see is in the progress note area where it says intervention, a lot of people will check off 5 interventions and only utilize 2 of them in the narrative. That really shouldn't be happening. That's like a shotgun approach. You really want to be very specific to whatever's in the narrative is what you checked off in that interventions area. You don't want to have 5 and then only narrate that you only did 2.
So you have to explain the narrative of each of the intervention areas.
That's really what we're looking for is you did the intervention, how did the client react to it? Did they have insight to it? They didn't have insight to it. You noticed that they weren't getting, they weren't interpreting it whenever you were talking to them, so you made it much more concrete, so you did it on paper. You know, how did you adjust your interventions to meet their needs? So, documenting opening paperwork in the first progress note. So I'll give you guys an example about that. That's really, in terms of the opening paperwork, what you're putting down. So for example, client and mother were seen for first session and process the following opening paperwork that includes, but it's not limited to, contract for services, client's rights and responsibilities, privacy notice and symptoms checklist. So you want to kind of wrap up that you explore those different things with them.
What I usually write is reviewed and discussed Tykes Teens opening paperwork. Is that okay to summarize?
So this is on the test. Do not document that you completed the treatment plan or a psychosocial. So nowhere do you want to document that because then they won't pay us for the session. They will only pay you for one, I don't know what the word is, session. Yeah, one
Either
day.
just a treatment plan or the progress.
Medications, I've kind of heard different things in terms of medication. If the client is receiving medication from an outside physician as opposed to Dr. Marrero, I've kind of heard that some say if it's an outside physician that you don't document the client's response and you don't narrate that in the narrative. And I'll tell you, I've kind of heard 2 different things from a lot of people. So I would almost encourage you guys to keep checking in with Jeff as far as on case by case, as far as what you need to put in there, because sometimes it does change case by case. But I will tell you to not do it if it's not Dr. Marrero's client, if they're not receiving medication through Tykes Teens.
But isn't it better practice though? Because it's still, you know, your responsibility as a therapist if they're taking psychotropic medicines to check in with them to see how they're doing.
Yes, I agree. I think this is the thing that I'm hearing is policy kind of says not to, but then it is best practice to do that because of your clients and it does affect your treatment.
I don't necessarily document it, but I'll talk to them, and if they report a problem, I document that I encourage them to contact their provider and discuss their concerns, but I may not put it in the little drop down, 1, 2, 3, stuff like that.
And I usually do sometimes.
I do too.
Usually,
So clients receive response, 1 or 2 requires documentation as to why it's a 1 or a 2. So are they checking in with the psychiatrist? Are they not taking their medication on a regular basis? What's the reason that it's a 1 or a 2? Plan for the next scheduled appointment. I think that was because some people were putting weird dates on their discharge session. Some people put the date that they saw the client that day as their last one. Other people put the 9/9/99. So whichever one you'd like to use, just don't put some like an odd date.
Yeah.
So, all right, you guys have any questions, thoughts, feelings, concerns?
you're awesome.
What you just said.
If it's your last session with the client, you can use the 9/9/99, or you can just date it.
The same day.
And either,
Because you know where it says next scheduled appointment.
Because that's a required field, so you have to.
That's all right.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, thanks, Matt.